I mean, the first thing you need to think about when thinking about copyright is nearly everything that is a creative work is copyrighted. And so that means if you didn't create it, you need permission to use it.
Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we have your wonderful bio, nice little concise version of it out there for the audience to read about. But you want to tell us a little bit about your specialty in law and your background?
Yeah, sure. So, well, before I became an attorney, I was a photojournalist for 20 years, and I got involved in the advocacy work related to photojournalism through a trade organization that I was involved with. And so that was sort of what drove me down the path. And so I ended up getting into media law. I've worked in defamation defense, First Amendment related defense, copyright issues, contracts for creative professionals, and I represented individual photographers, online publications, major newspapers, television stations, and trade associations. So in addition to the litigation that I've done, I do legislative work, and I help organizations create resources related to photography and the use of photography and other media related, publishing related issues. And so that's just, I've been very lucky to build a practice that is completely built around the things that I love, which is publishing and photography and journalism.
For us in public relations and communication, I think it's very, very important that we understand enough about copyright laws and what our responsibilities are as practitioners or those who partner with social media managers, content creators, so that our organizations are doing the right thing and making creative moves safely, as well as honoring the rights of individuals who produce those works. So can you give us just a basic grounding or refresher on basic copyright laws?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing you need to think about when thinking about copyright is nearly everything that is a creative work is copyrighted. And so that means if you didn't create it, you need permission to use it. And so the two things that you really need to know are who owns the copyright, and then whether or not you have permission to use it, or whether you otherwise might have a right to use it. When people use photography for whatever they use it for, the biggest risk they face is a copyright infringement claim. And part of that is because people are often very casual with the way that they borrow pictures. And then I would think for a public relations or a communications professional that has clients, it's also your client's biggest risk. And so this is an area where you can be an expert for your client and where you can protect your client, and that creates real value for your client. So, you know, one of the things that I see a lot of people doing is pulling images off the internet thinking it's free, or using it in a way that's not authorized by the license.
And how would anyone even know? Because, you know, I think what's tough, and especially for new graduates or younger professionals, is that there is, you know, a little bit of a generalization and thought that, oh, you know, you're younger, you know how to use social media, you grew up with it, you're a digital native, go ahead and run our social media accounts, or they'll get interns for the summer or for a semester, and they kind of hand over the keys to those interns without those students or young pros really knowing the ins and outs of what is fair use, you know, what they're able to use in terms of photo. If they see something online, is sharing it from a brand's page putting them at any risk, or is it, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. And I think that it's really important that an organization control who has the keys. And so that goes more to the root cause of what I see sometimes in terms of legal issues. So you know, if you have a platform, if you have a website, if you have a social media page, you're publishing. And one of the things I see people do is not treating social media with the kind of care that they would treat something like a magazine or another form of publication that they would do. And so what I would urge people to do and what I advise my clients to do is to really have only a few people who have the keys to the social media accounts and the things that are your organization's publication online. And then those people have to be trained in things like copyright and defamation law. And they have to at least demonstrate an understanding so that they don't end up getting the company in trouble.
For anyone watching this, what would that training be? I'm allowed to post on Instagram or Facebook for my organization, or I'm helping a nonprofit and I'm building out a content calendar and I need images for it. What should I know?
You need to know which images you're using. You need to know who took those images and who owns the copyright, which is almost more important than who took them. But you need to know who owns the copyright to those images. You're really, your best bet is to create them yourself. But if you don't, then you need a license. So you need permission. A license is just a fancy word for permission. You need permission to use images. And so, the best way to get permission is just to ask, a professional photographer is going to charge you, and rightfully so, so you're going to have to pay for the use of those images, whether it's through, something like Getty or some sort of an agency, or whether it's directly with the photographer. So here's something I want to explain, which is the difference between employees and contractors when you have copyright issues. So an employee who is taking pictures in the scope of their employment, the employer owns the copyright to the work. So for example, if you are a social media coordinator at a company and your job is to produce social media content, and you go places and you take pictures, whether it's with a fancy camera or your iPhone, whatever, that's part of your job. And so the company would own the copyright. That's assuming that you're an actual employee. But if you do something as a contractor, so you're a business and they're your client, the default is that you own the copyright. So any agreements between contractors and a company should address permission for using the work. And that way there's clear understanding and clear expectations on who can use the work and how they can use it. And then in terms of social media, again, like I said, you don't want to treat that with any less care than you would treat any other kind of publishing. And so you want to make sure that you're not putting things on social media that would get you in trouble if you had put it somewhere else.
What do you see what's a common practice that is a no-no in your industry and helps us illustrate this point? What do you see people doing to get in trouble?
Well, I do see a lot of people you still see it where people just assume because they'll, let's say, I need a picture of, the Alamo. So they Google Alamo and up pops a bunch of pictures in Google Images. Well, that doesn't mean that they're free. This is not an offering from Google for pictures for you to have and use. They direct you to the pictures, but you still need to figure out who owns the rights to those pictures. Again, you can go out and take your own picture. I think that people sometimes just, want to do the easiest thing, but the easiest thing in the long run is often the hard way because it gets you into a lot of hot water.
So if you do, let's say you are writing content and, you want to use an image. I know there's sites that have some open licensing for copyright that you can, use image. Either you pay or there's some that are just kind of open sources.
Those are actually kind of risky. You're much better off going to a reputable source and licensing the images. You want to make sure that the license covers what you're using it for or what your client is using for. And you want to make sure that the permission that's granted to you conveys to your client, or that you get permission for your client as opposed to for you. Because, for example, with royalty-free, the permission in a royalty-free license only conveys to the person who bought it. So you can't buy a bunch of royalty-free images and then sell them as part of your products. Now, the thing about open source and kind of free images and these free image sites, and I've seen people get caught with this a lot, you just don't always know that the person who posted it is the person who actually has the right to use it. So
really, oh my.
You see these, I mean, it's really easy to find, you know, it's like free wallpaper or, you know, just all kinds of free sites. They're just drawing you in, they're giving you pop-up ads. And the quote unquote free photography is the lure. And the problem is that people just stole those pictures and threw them out there. And so you really have to be careful about something that says it's free when it's really not the right of the person who's putting it out there to provide it and offer it to you. One of the things, again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about asking for permission. If you just ask for permission, you're having a conversation with somebody, you can often figure out, you know, is this person genuine? Is this offer genuine? Do they really have a right to do this? So, I mean, I know that it's counterintuitive to sometimes want to just do things the more difficult way, but I'm telling you that it's much easier to like send an email, confirm the origins, or license it properly in the first place than it is to be staring at a copyright infringement lawsuit for you or worse for your client. I mean, you know, because that's going to hurt your relationship with your client.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point to underline, because that is what being socially responsible is about, right? Yeah. It's not always the quick and easy cut corners way. It is about this longer game and this win-win and enduring relationship, which we uphold through PRSA. What about when somebody, you know, has another organization, another brand posted some kind of image or, you know, whatever? I have definitely seen online, either organizations or even like personal people on their accounts, like share an image and then they put the little emoji of a camera and they tag the organization or the photographer who took it as the idea of credit. Does that count as credit? Is that the right way to attribute it, or is that not good enough?
Well, I mean, credit isn't going to get you out of the original point, which is that you need permission to use somebody else's image. You know, and it's a little different in the commercial setting, because you really have to be careful about, even within social media, you know, resharing stuff for commercial purposes. But you know, certainly, let's just assume there's no question about whether it's a commercial use. Let's just assume you're operating as an individual. Like within the Facebook universe, Facebook terms of service, you know, somebody signs up and they put settings on how they want their work to be used, and they can mark it, I want this to be shareable. You can share that within the social media or within the Facebook world, okay? But that does not give you a right to like download the picture and then go put it on, say, Twitter or your website. And so I think some people also get caught up with that. So the sharing license that you would have as somebody who's using Facebook to reuse a picture within Facebook is only sort of within that universe. It doesn't extend beyond. And so that's another way I think that people get caught. They see something on social media and they think, oh, again, it's out there, so I can just take it and do something. No, the rights that you have to reshare things within Facebook are really limited to Facebook. And then I think that it's actually questionable whether a corporation could reshare something even within Facebook for commercial purposes. I think it's a little bit of a different analysis than, say, me just saying, oh, Melissa, I like that picture that you posted, you know, of your kid, and I shared it with my followers. You know, it's a different equation when you're talking about commercial purposes.
One thing we're taught when we're building social media content calendars is to curate articles, right? And other posts. So if something's in alignment with your brand pillars and the values of your organization, or I know on our personal side, something resonates with us, we want to kind of share it. And a lot of times organizations ask, share and like, right? Tag, help us with reach.
Yeah.
And spreading our vision and message, right? But in terms of what we're talking about too, I think innately we understand it's wrong to download a photo, something we see posted, particularly from a photographer. I know that already that would hit red flags. Like I wouldn't go take a photo that, Alicia, the photographer, would posted, right? And then download that and then put it up on my brand's channels or my clients' channels without permission and working that out. But if they liked it and like if they forwarded it on and then put a little commentary on it, I mean, that's what I'm seeing more. Mm-hmm. And I would think some organizations might argue like we weren't trying to make $1 off that commercially. We're trying to engage with our network and with the Facebook world, to your point. What would you say about that as a lawyer?
Well, again, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble if you just ask permission. And then you don't have to have the argument. I think that there could be an earnest legal debate about, whether or not you have a right to do that. Commercial, all of the things that a corporation does that are marketing are in fact commercial, because they're geared towards bringing in and proposing a transaction.
It sounds like the number one tip, if no one takes anything away, is that if you want to use something else someone else created, you have to ask for permission. Is that correct?
If you remember nothing else from this talk, that's what you should ask.
I mean, that's a huge step forward.
It would be helpful to have the conversation in writing, because you want to make sure that later when you're like, oh, well, wait a second, they said I could use it for, for Facebook, but maybe you want to use it for something else. And so, if you have a conversation in email, whether somebody says, the limits that somebody placed on your use. And that's one reason why when I work with photographers or people who use photographs, I urge them to always have a contractual agreement that lays out the usage. That just because somebody gives you permission or a license to use a picture for one purpose doesn't mean that it's permission or license for all purposes. And this is true whether it's a wedding photographer or a commercial photographer or a photojournalist. Licenses can be very specific. They can also be very broad, but you get the license that you pay for, and you can't exceed that license. And if you do, that's a copyright violation as well.
If you're going to go see a lawyer, you're going to talk to an attorney, something's really upset you. It's an investment of time. It's an investment of, dollars, right? So what is it that's really an infringement in their mind that they come to you for?
Well, I mean, it's usually just use without permission, and it doesn't have to be a professional. Everybody owns copyright. So here's my camera. Okay. I'll take a picture.
Better ask me for permission.
The picture I just created, okay, I created a picture. I own the copyright to this picture now. Okay, I don't have to do anything. So everybody creates pictures all day long, wherever they go, but they own the copyright. It happens immediately. And so just because someone's not a professional photographer doesn't mean you don't need to respect their copyright. A professional photographer is more likely to go after somebody who violates their copyright, because this is how they earn a living and they understand the value of their work. But there are plenty of instances of amateurs who pursue copyright violations.
Sure. Okay. So ask for permission, get it in writing. And does it writing mean something as simple as like a direct message on a social media? Hi, Alicia, I really love the photo you took. I'd love to post it. as part of my channel with this comment. Is that good enough? Or does it have to be something signed, an email?
So what you really want to do is get something that you can save, and then you want to save it just so that if there's a problem later. And again, if you're doing this for commercial purposes, you're going to want to expect to have to pay for it. So I just I say that because one thing I hear from photographers all the time is a feeling that they're being disrespected when somebody says, "Oh, I love this photo that you took." So here you are saying, "I see what you've done here as a professional. It's valuable. It's so valuable that I want to use it, but I don't want to pay you for it." Like, that's incredibly rude. And so, I would encourage people to present their ask in a way that acknowledges that work has value and that you want to use this to promote your brand because it has value. And so acknowledge the value that it has by offering money or, opening the conversation about what it will cost instead of just assuming that people want to have this conversation over and over and over again. Because I have to tell you that photographers just get bombarded with requests to use their work for free, and this is what they do for a living. So it would be like if I said, "Hey, Melissa, I'm building a website. Can you build me one for free?" I promise I'll put your name on the bottom and tell people what a great job you did. So I just say that to say, like, when I suggest that you ask for permission, I also would suggest, particularly with a professional, that you recognize that this is a work that has value, and the fact that you are interested in it is proof of the value that it has. And so don't be disrespectful about that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It certainly happens in public relations. It happens in marketing. I mean, people ask all the time for ideas or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. Sometimes you can't put a monetary value on an idea. A great idea, a great strategy can change everything for an organization. So I absolutely understand. So what we do on our personal channels, we need to be cognizant of that too. I would imagine, particularly if we are in PR, we should be walking the same type of walk as what you suggest to clients. Yeah. Taking your own photos or making your own videos is going to be key. Asking permission, being prepared to financially compensate, a pro or even an amateur if there's something that you like and you think it has value. It sounds like sharing articles that have those social media icons might be a little safer space to walk into. And then, I know we would always say tag the organization if they're on the same platform, give them the honor of that reach too, right? Share that love in that way on social. Have you seen anything different happening since the pandemic? I feel like everyone's online all the time now. Obviously in our worlds, everything's a little more stressful, a little more sensitive, but have you seen anything new pop up since the pandemic?
The main thing that I've seen is that people are under a lot of pressure. And when people are under pressure, they cut corners. And so the thing that I would urge everyone to do is just acknowledge and recognize the pressure that you're under, even whether it's financial pressure or you don't have as much staff or you just, are being interrupted by your children every 15 minutes. That's me. And recognize and be aware of that pressure and how it can result in you making bad decisions or cutting corners or not taking the time. So maybe under normal circumstances, you have a process that you would go through, but you're not in the office. The people that you would go through that process with aren't next to you. And so you're skipping pieces of the process.
Yeah, I think too, I will often hear like, well, it's just social, right? No, it's just social media. And I am kind of seeing more of as, this pandemic kind of wears on and there's more budget cuts, and there's layoffs, and all of that's so tragic and unfortunate. But you're right, Alicia. I do see a little bit of, well, we'll just reassign that to this person who's still on staff. We'll reassign that to that person, or we're cutting expenses, so we're going to let go of our, pro experienced consultant or agency or support who really has their eye completely on that ball, right? I think that's the value of that is, any counsel outside your organization or anyone outside your organization that is responsible to contribute, to any digital marketing or content creation is solely responsible for that. So sometimes they don't get caught up in everything else that's happening reactively. So it's kind of a shame. So it's important that they do keep that in mind and not make those mistakes. Because I would imagine, that a lot of professionals who are in the services industry and a lot of photographers and content creators are, everyone's really been impacted one way or another financially, I think. And even if opportunities, because you did event photography, for example, those are not the same, right?
Yeah.
That every dollar is going to count in some ways, in a way that I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a good point about shifting, so maybe you're shifting your business model because, you were really involved in event planning, and obviously that's an industry that's really suffering. And so your shift, one of the benefits of being a business owner is when the wind blows in the wrong direction, you can shift with the wind, but you have to then think about, okay, if I'm doing something else, let's make sure I know how to do that properly. And you touched on a really interesting point, which is, if you're reorganizing your staff, or if if somebody had to be let go and that person was the person with, like you said, the eye on the ball, who's going to have their eye on the ball now? And does that person really know what they need to know? Do they have the training that they need to have to protect themselves and to protect the company from harm, whether it's defamation or invasion of privacy or copyright?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that we could do probably a whole seminar on this, exactly, because now I'm like, all the red flags in me start going up, like, I need to make sure everyone has more information. Where can we get more information on this? Whether it's, something online you like to point to that maybe you've created, or should they contact you? Or,
well, people are welcome to contact me if they need an attorney to walk through or look at their processes. That's something I've done for companies. But and there's good resources online. I would say, though, that one of the things I always tell people is to consider the source, and particularly with legal issues, you always see people like getting on Facebook in a mom group, saying like, well, I have this legal problem with the company that I run, and that's not where you want to get your answers. You don't want to get your answers from anyone other than a reputable source. And so you really need to make sure that you understand, and if you want to do the research, there's a lot, actually copyright.gov has a lot of really good white papers on different issues within copyright. They're kind of dense, but it is helpful to have a lawyer, if you can afford it, at your side to help you through questions or sensitive issues.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely, I think so. And as we kind of wrap up, if I know so much has evolved in the last couple of years in terms of creating for digital and whatnot. Any last thoughts or items that you wanted to share about any changes or any points we didn't make today?
Well, like you said, I could talk about this for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So, I think the main thing is to treat the new ways of communicating with the same care that you treat the old ways of communicating, and make sure you have a process. Make sure that you have a limited number of people who have the keys, who have the ability to put your message out there, and that they understand not just the legal issues, but all the other issues that your company wants to put forth as your message. And just take the time and care to do things right, and you won't have to spend a lot of energy after the fact cleaning up.
Right. I think for the same reason you would say, it's good to have an attorney like you in their phone, right? We would say the same thing. It's good to have a PR pro that you can work with, and hopefully is around to help proactively before any problems. And I think that's the ultimate, sign of being socially responsible in our work, right? Thinking 360 all the way around of what we're creating, what we're sharing, how we're developing that. Is that ethical? Is it responsible? What is the potential benefit and potential damage? So I think this is a great conversation for that. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We'll, it's such a pleasure to talk with you, and especially get advice from someone of your stature and personal experience with this background and passion for it. So we appreciate you, Alicia. We'll make sure to share your information on all the copy around this video, so that way people know how to get a hold of you. And I just thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, and you all stay well.
Thanks, Melissa.
All right, talk to you later.